All right, we'll call the meeting to order, please, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone, to the meeting tonight. Roll call, Mr. Lombard.
Ullum.
Yes.
Odie. Yes. Saxer.
Yes.
Telcott.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Thank you. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented, please.
So moved. Second.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next, no conflict of interest or disclosure waiver requests. So that takes us to the approval of the minutes of our regular meetings from February 14th and February 28th. I would entertain a motion to approve those as presented, please.
So move. Second.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. No community input on the agenda tonight that I am aware of. That takes us next to our financial items, bills and claims. Mr. Lombard.
Okay, I would entertain anything from the Board of Education that they had. I think I had a couple noted here on page 4. I haven't noted these until now. We've seen a lot of these online course bills coming through Core, Educational Co-op, TIE, and I think Chester School District. 25,007. Those are for the online courses for distance learning people. To date, we've spent 122,000 at the high school and about 11,000 at the elementary level. On page 9, Midway service, the fuel, obviously we're starting to experience some of that increase, quite a bit of that increase. In addition to that, just right above that, the utilities, the natural gas costs are significantly higher, as we all know, this year than they have been in the past. So these two line items are basically fully expended in March to budget, so there'll be deficit items. Page 11, reading bus line, we had a whole bunch of charter trips this year, $14,445 in this month that we had. Year to date, we expended $62,000. We generally spend about $75,000 a year on charter bus trips. Haven't seen a huge increase in that. Total, we had $598,760. Advance payments was $8,242. The breakdown of that, $62,284 of pay vouchers. As you've seen month after month, a lot of substitute teachers. Food service bills of $190,000.
If there are no questions for Mr. Lombard on the bills and claims, I would entertain a motion to approve those as presented, please.
Paul, I've got one question under foods. The high school convection oven, is that money that was used to
Lower cash
Lower?
bands, yeah.
Okay.
It's an attempt to lower it, but every time we lower it, just more shows up. I don't know. But yes, that is trying to change out any equipment that's older. And
it's not in yet or this summer?
no, I think that one came in, didn't it, Ty? Okay.
Okay.
I thought that one was in. Sorry.
Any further questions? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the bills and claims as presented.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Financial report, Mr. Lombard.
Okay, the cash report for the month of February had $14.1 million coming into the month, $3,524,000 of receipts, and $3.9 million of expenditures, left $13.7 million at the end of February. $6.8 million was in the general fund, $5.1 million in the capital outlay fund, just a little over $1 million in the special education fund. $70,000 in the enterprise fund, and $656,000 in remaining in the capital projects fund. The $3.5 million is itemized on the next two pages. I just had one item noted in the middle of the receipts. The $3.5 million receipts, bank franchise taxes, came in this month from Minnehaha County in the amount of $970,000. That's about right on our projected budget. That I think we had $950,000. Investment report of $1,285,000. Payroll for the month of February was $2.3 million, with the related insurances and deductions of $1.4 million. On the actual financial statements, the first two pages are the revenues. 67% of the fiscal year is completed. The general fund is at 56.7%. A lot of these lower numbers in the revenue are due to the fact that we don't have all that COVID money. We got a big chunk of COVID money last year right at the beginning, like $2 million or whatever. These I'm trying to get back in reimbursements and stuff. We'll eventually get our COVID money on there. It's just kind of a pain to get them back. Capital outlay is at 38%, but I have a $500,000 COVID request in for payment right now out of there, so they'll catch up. I don't have any notable discrepancies. Expense report, once again, 67% of the fiscal year done. General fund was at 67.2%. Capital outlay fund is at 69% expended. Special education is at 68% year-to-date expended. And the bond redemption fund is at 94% of its expenditures. Food service statement, as I said, we talked about earlier, continues to generate a lot of money. Net accrued profit at the end of February is $705,000 versus $477,000 at the same time last year. Last year ended up the year with $908,000 profit.
Orders, steaks.
Fillets. You noticed the way that I questioned you there, didn't you? Generally, I don't, if something isn't in, I won't pay for it, so I was a little put back when he made that. I mean, it's generally installed by the time I pay for it. The capital projects statement, we just continue to chip away at the FF&E, the furniture and fixtures, a little bit each month that we've been paying. That's the only thing that changes on this statement. We still, this month we had a utility vehicle that we paid for, and we're slowly catching up to those things, chipping away at it. We got several technology items that are caught up in the supply chain, I think somewhere, I don't know where they're at, but a lot of technology stuff that we're still waiting on. Lastly, the trust and agency report showed $274,000 amount held for others. That's all I had.
Mr. Lundberg, I'm going to ask the question that you know the answer to, and I just want the public to hear it. The Capital Projects Fund, the excess funds that are remaining there will be transferred where when we close that project out? I just want to confirm that.
They will revert back to the bond redemption fund. Since this is a general obligation bond that we received the money, most of the money, we received some of the money from other sources, but majority of the money was from a general obligation bond. So they will revert back to that fund, hopefully by June of this year. I'd like to get that account closed by the end of this fiscal year, but we'll see on all this stuff that's still hanging out there. I got like $100,000 of switches and computer stuff out there. We have no idea where it's at, somewhere. So yes, that's thank you.
Any other questions on the financial report tonight? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the financial report as presented, please.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. That takes us, Thank you very much, Mr. Lumberg. That takes us to our general business section, administration reports, Administrative Center, Superintendent Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple items to update you on here this evening. COVID-19 information, no changes to processes and/or protocols. Would note that we have every expectation of reverting our processes and protocols back to a more standardized pre-COVID approach for next year. But it is relevant to note that we will have to maintain a COVID-19 pandemic response plan because of the federal dollars associated within the budget, and that's a requirement of that. So just an item to note. Speaking of budget process, as we continue to communicate our processes and overviews for the upcoming budget year, forms, documents, those items are compiled and completed January through March. You have received the five-year plan. You have approved the new staff positions for next year. Tonight, you will be getting an overview of the preliminary capital outlay budget, and then you'll be seeing a preliminary budget presentation in May with that budget hearing in July. So very systemic in the way in which we approach our budget. Would note, 2 school board seats are open. They are both 3-year terms. April 7th is the earliest date to circulate a petition. Contact the business office for more details. Negotiations, timeline, and wage recommendations. Would just note that here in the month of March, we really move into the negotiations process now that the legislative process is complete and we know exactly what has transpired at that level. Look to work through that respective process and potentially have a contract to ratify at the April 11th meeting. In terms of a legislative update, I would note that the session is complete. It was completed on March 10th. There's one remaining day in the legislative process, and that is March 28th, which is veto day. Ultimately, I would note that education received a 6% funding increase, and then at this point in time, we're also working with our respective professional organizations to go through the legislation that has passed and any impacts that would have on us from a policy or procedural standpoint. I do have an update regarding our school lunch or the universal free meals that have been referenced a little bit this evening already. I would note that free breakfast and lunch will end as of June 30th. So the universal free meals and all of the respective waivers associated with free breakfast and lunch will end on June 30th. So next year, so the public can begin to know and understand, the free and reduced lunch application will again be a critical item for folks to complete in order to maintain their free or reduced lunch status. That's a critical thing to note. In addition to that, I would note that we would anticipate being able to continue our practice locally of covering the cost for reduced meals. So again, free and reduced lunch applications will need to be completed next fall for folks to be eligible to receive free or reduced breakfast and lunch. It's also relevant to note that we, the Brandon Valley School District, are no longer eligible to provide summer feeding programs. So the summer lunch programs that we have had over the course of the past 4 or 5 years, we have fallen out of eligibility in accordance to census data. So previously we got in with the census data. Census has occurred, we have fallen out. That's due to socioeconomic status of the district, et cetera. So we are no longer eligible for summer feeding programs. So there will not be a summer lunch program this year because we are no longer eligible in accordance to the federal government. So a couple items to note. Good news reports we will have here over the course of the next few months. The second meeting in March will be special services. Second meeting in April will be the middle school. And the second meeting in May will be the high school. We'll talk a little bit about the high school edition and the awarding of that bid here in just a bit. Would note that even with the delayed awarding of the bid, there's no change to construction timelines or completion dates. A couple calendar items. We're knee-deep in parent-teacher conferences here this evening, which is why it was hard to find a place to park. Intermediate and middle school will be tomorrow night, and I would just remind everyone that school is in session on Thursday, as we have had a snow day. With that, would certainly entertain any questions that you have.
Jared, I have one. Going back to summer lunch program, didn't we retrofit a bus for that project? And if so, what's that going to be used for, or what's going on?
Correct. Great answer. So we did retrofit a bus with the concept and the idea that we would be able to go to our highest need sites and provide the summer lunch program via that route. What we have found is those sites that we believed would be eligible are no longer eligible. So what we will utilize the summer lunch feeding bus for will be for things like the fourth grade field trip when they come up to the football field for field day. Right now, they have to pack their own lunch. That could still be an option, but we can also serve out of the summer lunch bus or the feeding bus, the mobile feeding unit. So, and again, may come back into eligibility in future years, but at this point in time, that's the type of thing we would use it for. Field trips would be another example that we could use it for, but a variety of options that we can use it for, but at this point in time, we're not eligible for the summer feeding program in any of our respective sites. Good question.
Any other questions for Superintendent Larson? Thank you. Mr. Lundberg, anything additional? No. I don't see anybody from the high school here. Mr. Thorson, anything tonight? Mr. Skipstead? Mrs. Nelson? Mr. Henschel? All right. No board policy. That takes us to our first item under general business, recommendation to accept the low bid from Gilhaugen Construction for the high school classroom addition project in the amount of $8,836,000 as presented.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would just first and foremost like to thank Architecture Incorporated for their work through the process and their timely tweak of our respective amendments. Would also like to thank Mr. Lundberg and Mr. Henschel for their quick work in terms of review of the capital outlay budget, the preliminary capital outlay budget, and also the collaborative work done to find the additional resources necessary to get the project done in totality. So what we have is we have a recommendation to approve the awardance of the bid to Gilhaugen for the base bid of $8,749,000 and the add alternate, which is the renovation of the chemistry lab. So Mr. Stathem's chemistry lab would be that specific room for a total amount of $8,836,000. Would recommend approval and would field any questions that you have.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next, we have approved 2022-2023 preliminary capital outlay budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have enclosed for you a preliminary capital outlay budget in the amount of $13,652,000. It's certainly relevant to note that $9.7 million of that is the Brandon Valley High School addition. Outlined within the capital outlay summary for each of our respective buildings and departments are the priorities of the district for this upcoming year. It is also truly relevant to note that with the extreme market fluctuations, I would say that it's safe to say that some things that are receiving a budgetary amount may not get done in the event that other priorities come in over what the budgeted amount is. So as we always do through the preliminary capital outlay process, this is really the starting point for us to get and obtain bids and numbers for those priorities and then work from there. So would certainly recommend approval and would also field any questions that you have.
So moved.
Second?
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks. Motion passes. Next, we have consent items 3, 4, and 5 under general business. I would entertain a motion to approve those as presented, please.
So moved. Second.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Personnel, I would entertain a motion to approve items 1 through 14 as presented, please.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. There's 2 items there for information only about some transfers. Under Communications Central Office, there are no building permit applications. Under Board of Education, we have 3 thank yous from various patrons or staff in our district. And that takes us to our formal board reports. Does anyone have a formal board report that they would like to give tonight? Gee, everybody's quiet. Teach Well, we meet tomorrow, and we'll have our audit hearing tomorrow night. And then Child Nutrition and Wellness, it sounds like we may be looking at going to the National Convention again this summer in Orlando, so that will be exciting. One travel report there for your review. And with that, it looks like that takes us to the end of our scheduled agenda. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming.